Hi, everyone. This is Marissa Davis, again, founder and principal of Tallawah Consulting, where we help mission-driven brands maximize their impact by ensuring that purpose, innovation, and inclusion are part of their core strategy. This Today, we have again another awesome guest to join us for our Tallawah Talks series. And again, our Tallawah Talks series is focused on highlighting and amplifying the voices of change makers who are embodying what it means to have inclusive impact. I'm so happy today that we have none other than Noel McKenzie joining us today, who has done a number of different things, but what he's most known for at this juncture is as executive director of Represented Foundation, which is a New York-based nonprofit organization dedicated to solving the diversity deficit for within social impact leadership. So one of the ways in which kind of what's driven him to do this is to be able to create a better reality for Black and Latinx founders who represent currently less than 15% of nonprofit CEOs. And one of the ways he's doing that is through VER, which is an incubator for social entrepreneurs of color. Also, under his work and leadership, he's already kind of rolled out 3 cohorts of leaders who have learned the fundamental of management, programming, and fundraising fundamentals to launch their social enterprises, including a number of different social enterprises. But one, for example, is a Brooklyn-based youth center, another is a Harlem-based wellness clinic, and even a voter education platform for Black and Brown residents in New York. He, part of his experience is rooted in the HR world, which he's been in for over 10 years, and is also a proud graduate of Emory University and holds a master's degree in nonprofit management from the Milano Graduate School at the New School in New York. So I'm so happy to have you here with us, Noel. I'm sure there's so much that you can offer and share with us, but I want to be able to start out with the first question I've asked all of my guests so far for our social entrepreneur series, which is, what is social entrepreneurship in your own words?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for the intro. Thanks for, I'm happy to be here. It was great having my bio read. I like that. It was fun.
We'll try to do that more.
It was good, yeah. I think when I think about like social entrepreneurship, I kind of think about, so the first 2 spheres of business are the private sphere and the government sphere. And then I think social entrepreneurship is in the middle of that, the social sector. So it is I want to do business. I want to grow business. I want to make money. And I want to do good. I want to heal a community. I want to provide services or make something better. So social entrepreneurship is about really that overlap, if you will. It's the overlap of business and commerce with the desire to deliver services and products that really make a better reality for all of us.
No, absolutely. And thank you for sharing, because, social entrepreneurship is one of those things where still it isn't necessarily uniquely or uniformly defined. There are some who kind of see it more on the closer to nonprofits or creative problem solving side. And then, the more on the other side is the for-profit kind of business work. So I really appreciate that your offering of that definition. And it sounds to me, so there's this kind of foundational definition that you've offered, right? And then there is the experience that you've had being in HR for over 10 years, and your formal kind of educational background in nonprofit management and leadership. So tell me, how exactly did you get into this work? How did your journey to becoming a social entrepreneur even begin?
I guess it probably began. Okay, well, no, I'll go back. It started in the 70s. My grandmother She was from Almontown, Kingston,
Mhm.
and they moved. She got not a scholarship, but a sponsor to work at Kenwood Academy. Yeah, Kenwood Academy, which was in a network of Sacred Heart schools.
Mhm.
And they've been in, the US for like hundreds of years, private boarding schools. She got the job to work at this convent for the nuns who used to be teachers at the school.
Okay.
And then she worked there for maybe 20 some years. Her three daughters worked there, including my mom, who worked at the convent for 30 years.
Mhm.
And so when I and my sister were born in the 80s, in the 90s, we got scholarships to go to this school called Doane Stewart in Albany, New York. And at Doane Stewart, starting in 5th grade, one of the things that was part of the curriculum was community service. And so from 5th grade, I'm going to Head Starts, I'm going playing bingo with the nuns. Community service was just like part of, the go-to. And then somewhere around high school, I think my eldest half sister moved up from Jamaica, and she actually had a home from Habitat for Humanity, which I had already been volunteering with. So just all these reasons why I really love this field, this area. And I was like, oh, shucks, someone works in this, like there's a whole career here. So when I went to undergrad, I knew that I wanted to create a nonprofit. My original thought was create a nonprofit record label. I was really big into music. I was in the music industry for a minute, just like managing in the business side of things. And then I had an opportunity for a internship during undergrad in South Africa at an NGO. And I'll never forget the day that the board chair comes to visit, and they greet everyone, they shake everyone's hand, they thank everyone for their help, their support, yada, 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 except for me. I'm the only person they don't acknowledge, the only person they don't look at, they don't talk to, and the only person of color at this NGO that serves 100% people of color.
Mhm.
And so after that, I kind of just like tabled that experience. But after that, I went to work in charter school networks. I helped open a school as a founding office manager in Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Mhm.
And when I was there, I just couldn't help but recognize like, all right, so it's a brand new school. Most of the teachers maybe Teach for America, they're coming from Yale, they're coming from Princeton, really bright, intelligent people disconnected from the community. So when the parents come in and the teachers are here and there was a disconnect, parents don't understand why, the teachers don't understand why the parents are mad about yada, yada, yada. They can't wear their Jordans. Parents don't understand why teachers seem cold or whatever. And so there's this disconnect here. And I'm like, am I the only one who understands that, this mom over here, she's just mad because no one is listening to her. She's not feeling heard. And if you literally just like, listen to her for 20 seconds, she'd probably like say, all right, I'm good, I'm done. And then we'd be able to go on. So I kind of looked at it and recognized if I looked around, again, I was one of few people of color on the staff, on a team, but the school served 95, 96% kids of color, probably 98, honestly, now that I think about it, because I can't think of any white, there's one or two white kids when I was there. And I looked at this time, and I remember thinking, office manager, it's like, I love being able to work with the parents, but I'm like, man, no one is listening to me. Like no one is actually taking what I'm saying into account about how we can, work with parents, what they want to see. This is their community too. Again, I know we're here for a school, but they have voices and opinions. And I thought there has to be more. There got to be more than this. And so let me go figure out what that is. And so I went to grad school to study nonprofit management. And between grad school, being in classrooms where, again, I was one of few people of color. And the way that we talked about social problems in that room, I was like, who are we talking about? Like, just to be clear, are we talking about the people who are literally right outside our building right now, who are down the street, down the corner, because the way that we were talking about them was just so lofty that I had to remind myself real quick, like, hold on, are we talking about Brooklyn? Like, are you talking about Black people? Are you talking about Latino? Like, I had to really dumb it down in order to not get kind of wrapped up in this rhetoric, it's not, you know, this grad school rhetoric. But when I was in grad school, I remember thinking, okay, there's something to this consulting. And so I tried to take what I had learned, what I had studied, and do consulting to young nonprofit teams or people who wanted to create their own nonprofits. And I did that for a couple years, maybe like 3 years. And in that, I was feeling like, man, all the clients that I'm getting who can afford services that would pay me, you know, pay rent, pay a light bill, pay something,
Right.
aren't the ones who really need my help. And they're also the ones who, by and large, every time I talk to them, it seems like you already have an idea in your head of what you want to do, you know, and so what I'm offering, you're not receiving. And that's when I was like, okay, how do I make this into a program? And if I make it into a program, that means I can teach more than one person at a time. That means I can really bring the services to people who need them, social entrepreneurs of color, and I can find a way to subsidize the cost if I make it a nonprofit. And so that's why I founded Represented Foundation in 2017. Been doing consulting before that, and in 2017, I was like, let's make this into a program, into a company. Really, I was I knew that I wanted to stay in this field, nonprofit, social impact, and I did not want to be in rooms where I was the only person of color talking about how to help people of color. And so I had to create my own space for that.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And, you know, it sounds like part of how this came about was being able to identify that need or that problem that you were trying to solve. So for me, I guess a related question to that then is, what is this messy problem that you're trying to solve, and how are you going about solving it?
Mm-hmm. I think, so the specific problem we talk about is the diversity deficit. And we can talk about the fact that people of color are about a third of the population and growing, you know, will soon be 50% of the population. But when it comes to mission-driven organizations, and we can track this with nonprofits, because every year nonprofits have to, you know, your 990s, your taxes, at least nonprofits, historically this information has been tracked. We know that nonprofit executive directors and CEOs, it is less than 15%. And so as of last year, I think it was 13. And I'm sure that's increased this year. We just don't have the measurements yet. But just think the fact that people of color, period, you know, we're a third of the population, but we only get to be 14% of, you know, CEOs of executive directors. Mm-hmm. Particularly because when you think about nonprofits, and also go back to, again, nonprofits have to talk about who they serve and what they're here for. And so most nonprofits, nonprofits that do human services, so, you know, not the environment, what else? Not the environment, not necessarily, well, just not the environment. That's a great example. Or not animals, not the environment, not animals, but you're helping people. That's about 2/3 of nonprofits, period. Mm-hmm. So 2/3 of nonprofits exist to support people. And generally when you are a nonprofit that exists to support people, you exist to support underserved communities. Predominantly, that's Black and Brown. Now, Black and Brown folks only get to be 13% of leaders, even though 2/3 of nonprofits exist to support them. That's a deficit. That's a diversity deficit.
Right.
And I think one of the areas that we really look at to solve this is we talk about, one of the things that I think about is, if you think about entrepreneurship, the biggest way you learn is by modeled examples of success or exposure to models examples of success. Mm-hmm. White straight men entrepreneurs have been able to look up and see themselves reflected as leaders since the dawn of time. You know, they have so many, whether they are formal teachers in high school or college, professors or mentors, or in incubators, they get the opportunity off rip to be surrounded by people that look like them. And so they think, okay, of course, this is for me too. That doesn't get to happen to Black and Brown, to Black and Latinx social entrepreneurs. They do not, get to have the teachers in front of them from a young age who say like, oh, I could do this too. And they also don't get to see the examples of what their nonprofits or what their mission-driven organizations can look like successfully from an abundance of Black and Brown social impact leaders. So that's one of the things that we're really focused on. Not only the formal education, the training that we give, Black and Latinx social entrepreneurs, but we want them to be surrounded by visual images of themselves as leaders. We think that, I know that is really one of the missed things that people think about. Oh, let's help these folks. It's like show them first. Show them what success looks like by putting someone who looks like them, in front of them. And that's how we get to see what success looks like and say, okay, I can do that too. Oh, I'm so glad, I saw that. I'm a mimic. I'm a reiterate. So that's one of the areas where we're really, really focused on.
Got you. No, and I mean, that is important, I think, in the way that just more broadly, the saying that representation matters is significant. So I'm curious, you're speaking a lot about sort of modeled behavior, and how that might encourage people to see themselves within this future, within the context of the spaces that you're fostering, seeing themselves as future CEOs and executive directors. Now, a very tactical question, how do you go about doing that? Like how do you foster that kind of environment, so that it is something that feels right for those who are part of it, but also actually can lead to that change in behavior, that allows people to actually go after their dreams?
Yeah. I think there's probably like a 5-part strategy.
Give us one of those parts.
Okay. So, I mean, one is in our program, VER, which stands for Vision, Execution, Results. We were really intentional about making sure that the vast majority of our instructors and our mentors identify as people of color. Mm-hmm. And so I think that within that, you have 3 wins right there. Mm-hmm. One is, okay, I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm in the incubator program, and I'm learning from someone who was teaching me about finance and budgeting. The information that they're going to tell me about finance and budgeting, awesome, amazing, check. Now I'm looking at a Black woman who is, hey, not only here is finance and budgeting, here's how I have used it to create my own success. So now I get to not only take the information that she's giving, that's valuable. I actually get to get her story as a point of value as well. Like I literally see an example of someone. And we know that when you see teachers know this all the time. The best way to teach someone is when you create community and a relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And so if I see something that within you that I identify with, I'm going to learn better. Yeah. And so that's one way about the instruction. And I think that similarly, when we do mentors and we do panels, our whole idea is to make sure that, you may have been taught entrepreneurship in a very Black and white or westernized focused. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we bring in all 32 flavors. We need to make sure that we bring in, like the mom and pop business, and what that looks like in a Black community, or, examples of what community philanthropy looked like in the Caribbean culture, and so we need to in the westernized sense, that was asking Black and Brown, Black and Latinx, Caribbean, African American, African, whatever, that was asking a lot of those folks to separate aspects of their culture and identity with that business. And what we want to show people is, no, there's actually strength in bringing your culture, your identity, your ethnicity, your history into what you do, because it's something that someone else can't do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes you stand out. And there's absolutely a market here for you, because there are all these, we are, as I said, people of color, a third and growing of the population. Will be 50% soon. Mm-hmm. So yeah, making sure that we just, again, like inundate them, surround them with all these diverse messages that literally break whatever you thought before about entrepreneurship only looks like this. Entrepreneurship means I have to do this. Like, nah. NASA, like you have all these other options you can do. Pick the one that works best for you.
Gotcha. No, that is powerful, because I think it expands people's imagination, and then kind of moves beyond this space of imagination to reality, right? Mm-hmm. So you were just touching on this, but you spoke to the importance of centering people's experiences, backgrounds, cultures to inform the kinds of ventures that they go about starting. So I'm curious for you, how has your own personal identities and upbringings, however you want to define that, how has that shaped how you have not only worked as a leader, but also as a social entrepreneur with the work that you're doing?
I think that maybe it came from, so the school that I told you that I grew up at, I was there, I literally went to this school pre-K through 12th grade. So from the time that I was 3 years old to the time that I was 17. And I was one of few Black kids, one of few kids of color, in the school. Some of my best friends are still from there, but because I grew up there, one of the things that happened was and it's a private school, my education was great, and so I grew up in a school that was expecting me, you're going to college. We don't, we're how many places are you applying to, Noel?
Right.
You're going.
Yeah.
And I
being, you said folks being Caribbean, that's also kind of a non-option. Yeah.
But I think because of that, I went to, this school that had a lot of middle class and wealthy white families and kids. And then I also grew up in, my home where neither one of my parents went to school, went to college, or neither one finished. They moved from Jamaica. They were both working 2-3 jobs. My cousin grew up in a little Jamaican community, if you will. And then I think from there it continued, even in college, was a friend with a lot of Indian, brown community, a lot of East Africans. And so I think my spheres just kept getting, I was more and more aware of all these different types of spheres. And then working in nonprofits, in human resources, leadership development and management, business development, it was just easier for me to see what's missing here and how many other ways this could look, And so I think that human resources, and I studied sociology. So really understanding that culture and values impact the way that different people act, and we can, in HR, they normally do this from a perspective of age demographics. Millennials value this, baby boomers value this, and they'll use different tactics for that. I just kept seeing that none of these tactics were for well, what about the, Black American social entrepreneur who still has a 9-to-5, and maybe has a kid or has responsibilities. So, for example, in our program, we make sure that our trainings, they happen nights and weekends, because we know that, asking people to take time out of that day, that find that time. Sometimes you just don't have that autonomy, you know? And so being aware of what the demographics of people that we're really trying to serve, being aware of what they need, being aware of what they value. I mean, that's what I think that has come from my whole life. Just understanding that different groups of people, depending on what their culture is, you know, they need different types of things to be supported, you know, differently. So yeah, that's a little bit about how that kind of developed for me.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, just even this point of, for different cultures kind of needing different things to be supported, I imagine that though that in your space that's necessary work, it's still challenging work. So I'm curious, perhaps it's as it relates to just this this work of trying to foster the right kind of learning environment and communal or community-oriented environment for these individuals. Or maybe it's something else. What would you say have been key challenges that you have faced, or you know, a core obstacle or something that you've overcome, that you've had to learn? And
Great,
maybe
I'm a fan.
So,
Okay, there you gave me the green light. I'll just vent real quick. And so I think that as learned and as we teach, you have an idea, you prove your idea, you sell said idea. And sometimes you can sell the idea before you even have to prove it. But certainly by the time you prove it, here come the dollars rolling in.
Yeah.
And so for us, that looked like, you know, our first pilot that we did in 2018. And there were, I think, 6 social entrepreneurs in that group. And so having created that pilot, and some of the outcomes were, you know, a health and wellness clinic was opened in Harlem, or one that I talk about is it was a job training program for returning citizens. So starting with women who were incarcerated, who were set to be released to return home, they started doing programming with them. And I think that that program for them, the founder's name is Taisha, Incredible Credible Messengers. When she did her pilot program, which they implemented.
Incredible what messengers?
Incredible Credible Messengers.
Okay, Incredible Credible Messengers.
When Taisha finished her program with us, I think there were 6 women in her program, in her job training program. And Taisha herself is formerly incarcerated. So like, she lived this life, she knew it, she recognized this is what she needed when she was coming out, someone who exactly had been through it, learned it, and then could tell, here's how you do trauma-informed practices to reacclimate to life. So that was our pilot. And when I got done with the pilot and went back to some of these folks to say, here's what we did, here's what we created, 6 folks did it, you know, and we have this amazing program, Incredible Credible Messengers. 6 women came out of prison or are now in a job training program. And everyone around me was like, that's it? And when I say everyone around me, I mean like potential funders or donors. You know, only 6 people. Oh, that's cute. You know, oh, you know, and it's like between myself and Taisha, both the things that we have undergone to present what you see in front of you today, we have moved heaven and earth. Right. You know, like we have absolutely done beyond and above. And so for the nonprofit, for the mission-driven field, the measurables don't match up yet. You know, for us, we're in our 3rd cohort now. And the only way that I could get some folks to show traction is to be able to like literally inundate them with messages of, yes, this program helped 8 kids and was able to give 2 kids scholarships to college. This program over here did, you know, they fed 10 families. So it's like in the nonprofit field, so often and because there's a lot of influence that comes from the corporate side,
Mhm.
they want huge, massive numbers and are too fearful to give support or dollars until they see those huge, massive numbers. And on my side, I'm like, well, how do you expect it to get to those huge, massive numbers if we don't have support, you know?
Right.
And so I think that that catch 22 is always frustrating and it's always different. And that's why part of showing these diverse examples of what success looks like for these leaders, I want the formalized philanthropy field. I want the formalized social impact space to be able to say that example of incredible messengers that I told you about.
Mhm.
Oh, 6 women came out of that program. 6 women are changing their lives.
Mm.
That's huge impact.
Right.
That's a major difference. That is worth, like investing into or valuing. We don't need to see 60,000 or 6 million changed. There is viability in the 6 that you've already shown us. And, let's like take into account and take into credit what things I want my wish would be a better evening measuring rod, something
Mhm.
that evens the playing field. That's
Mhm.
like, okay, this program, I see they've taught 20,000 kids. Okay, they taught 20,000 kids. What circles did that entrepreneur already roll in before they even started?
Right.
Did
Yeah.
that entrepreneur, does that entrepreneur who served 20,000 kids, do they have student loans? Do
Right.
they have a family to take care of? Oh, but someone has served 20 kids, but they've been able to figure out how to do it all their own.
Right.
And there's no one in their life who's gone to college before. There's no one in their life who's been in the formal entrepreneurship space. Those two initiatives need to be measured on some type of equal playing field.
Right.
That needs to change.
Gotcha. So it sounds like, the evaluation metrics or metrics of success that are then used to inform potential future funding opportunities, or just being able to show what success looks like with the kinds of programs that you offer, that it should be changed in a way that really meets more of the reality of kind of the quality of your engagement rather than just the quantity
Mhm.
of your engagement.
Yeah, I think we removed what the cultural journey was for that entrepreneur or for their story. And so it's not measured as part of their success. And I think that if there's a way that we tie in the culture, we tie in your personal story, we tie in all the things you've overcome with, and there's no way that you can, there's no way that you can refute the evidence, the information that you're seeing as like, wow, that is amazing, that is impactful, that is worth supporting.
Absolutely. No, I hear you on that, and it sounds like even just with the work that you have been doing, yes, there have been this challenge in particular that you've spoken to. There have been a number of other things that you've been able to overcome or accomplish. So I would love you to share, kind of share something that you've accomplished, or a win that you're really proud of.
I mean, I think about this in the last year. I feel really grateful. In the last year, I've been able to create a job at Represented Foundation for myself, for a team. Right now, I have 3 employees with me.
Mhm.
This is our 3rd cohort that we're in. And there were so many times and moments in there when I was like, I don't think this is it. I was doing Represented Foundation while I was a waiter.
Mhm.
Like I was a server, and then I would go over and I would do someone's payroll real quick,
Mhm.
whatever I could do just to keep the dream going. And so just the fact that it is still going, that is a win. I love that I get to champion the folks that come through our program. And so Nicole, who's the founder of HBCU Hub,
Mhm.
who was in our 2nd cohort,
Mhm.
when she finished the cohort, and by the time she finished with us, they had gifted their largest number of scholarships to students who were getting ready to attend HBCUs this fall. Like that was their win, but it was our win. We shared it with them. Or I think, let's see. I mean, there's so many. John, who's the founder of Poder Inc. When he came in our program, and it was like in the middle of COVID, and he was like a little touch and go. I don't think he might be saying that because he was just so busy. And now I'm getting emails about his nonprofit and how they're set up for Giving Tuesday. And I'm like, oh shoot, he's ahead of me. I gotta catch, So
Yeah.
that's Poder Inc. And they've already registered hundreds of Black and Brown voters in voter registration, this past year, which I think is incredible.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess like for me, I'm really proud of, like I said, we're in our third cohort. We're only growing. I think that, this year we got some of those first grants, like for the first time, someone was like, yeah, sign it, give them the money. We've been, like I said, this is our third cohort, and it took us till the third cohort for foundations to be able to say, you know what, I guess we'll give them a go, So, and I guess I'm mostly just proud that I didn't quit. That's really what I'm proud about, that I did not quit, that I'm still going. This absolutely, if this has been 3 years times 365, that's like, 1,050 or 1,200 or whatever. That's 1,200 days where I absolutely could have quit and could have been like, you know what? Let me just like go be a director of HR somewhere and just go, make this little money. And then like, I'll just do what I can on a smaller capacity or volunteer somewhere. So yeah, I'm really just proud that like we're still here and we don't have any signs of slowing. We're growing and continuing to like, work with amazing Black and Brown social entrepreneurs. And I think our community is just growing, of mentors, of instructors, of volunteers. So yeah, all of those things I'm proud about.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I too am glad you didn't quit, because now we can have this space to talk about all that you've been able to do over the past 3 years. So, that's awesome work. I think one of the things that you talked about, I mean, even with one of the social entrepreneurs that you had in your program, he was trying to navigate how to take his venture off the ground in the era of COVID. COVID is the reality for all of us right now, and particularly within the entrepreneurial spaces, including be it on the nonprofit side, for-profit side, or hybrid or whatever. This is an important reality that we're trying to navigate. So I'm curious to learn from you, how have you been navigating the COVID realities in a way that is still meeting the needs or goals that you have for a represented foundation? And how have you navigated the challenges of that?
So first, I think definitely switching to virtual learning. And so we've all kind of had to adapt to that. So all of our sessions are virtual when we have our trainings. But I think just recognizing that COVID-19 was an exasperator, it didn't create, and someone might argue with me by saying like, I'm going to say it didn't create new problems. And I'm saying someone may argue with that, and I'm fine with that. But what it did do is reveal and exasperate so many existing issues, particularly in communities of color. And who more needed to do that work to help those communities than Black and Brown social entrepreneurs? Those are the only folks who will be there regardless of who's in the office, regardless of what public funding is coming to support these projects or whatever. So it made us realize that, like, what would that look like if we were to say, oh, COVID is here, and so now entrepreneurs of color need less spaces, or they need less help to build their companies. No, it's the opposite. They have more issues that they're solving, more issues that they're focused on, and the gap is now wider. And so it made us kind of like focus up. Like this program is really needed. Like folks absolutely need a place to learn, to build their best social enterprise, because they're out here in the streets, working with people who, like Josue, who's the founder of the first tech fund in our third cohort, like his company was created this year, but they've already delivered 50 computers and Wi-Fi portable hotspots to kids in New York City who, surprise, didn't have Wi-Fi access when COVID came. So we need more places like this for social entrepreneurs, because it's just like, throw a dart and there's an issue, a social issue that needs to be addressed in Black and Brown communities, and COVID just like ramped it up. Like, we need to address it now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a good segue to my final question. This is work that you see as important and work that we need to address now. So the question is, how can we support you in your work? How do we follow you on your journey? What other support, are you looking for? And any of those things.
Yeah. So first, we'd love everyone to follow us on social media. You can check us out on Instagram at Represented Foundation. It's Represented Foundation, all one word. We're online on email, representedfoundation.org. And lastly, one area where we do need support, and particularly to the audience that you have here, is we are doing volunteer service groups. And so each one of our fellows in our cohort, we are pairing with small, short-term volunteer service groups, and they're going to last for 6 weeks. January, and we'll kind of have service groups who support one of our fellows in one small area. And so it can be marketing and branding, it can be finance and operations, or it can be business development. And so small, short-term service groups, they'll last for 6 weeks. Folks will volunteer for about 5 hours a week, so not a lot of time, but if you're interested in that, you should just go to our website, representedfoundation.org, and then just go to our programs page. When you go to our programs page, you'll see more information about volunteer service groups, how to sign up, what that looks like. So yeah, those are the 3 areas, or 3 ways where people can support. Check us out on Instagram, go to our website, service groups on the website as well.
Well, you heard it, folks. This is the way that we continue to support the work of folks like Noel. And Noel, again, thank you so much for spending some time with us here. And
pleasure.
All the best to you as you continue this journey.
Likewise. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you.